Hey folks, it's Robin Robbins here again with another titan of our industry, actually a perennial titan of our industry. And I am really looking forward to this interview. You've probably heard his name before. I'm sure you probably met him before because he is a titan of our industry. Rashaad Bajwa, who is now the current executive chairman of the board, I believe, now of Integris, who started Integris. I don't know if it was called Integris, 28 years. Leading it to be the powerhouse it is. I think it's over 240 million in revenue, locations all across the country, maybe the world. I don't know if you've gone there yet. We can talk about that. And like I said, a true entrepreneur in this space. So Rashaad, thank you for taking some time.
Oh, thank you, Robin, for having me. Enjoyed the conversation last time and look forward to continuing it.
Yeah, this is exciting. So what I really want to kind of focus on a little bit is, the audience that's listening to this is going to be typically the MSP that, a lot of our audience, they might be right around $1 million in revenue. Our audience ranges from people who are brand new startup MSPs, and they go all the way up to, over 10 million. And most of the MSPs that we work with are looking to grow a profitable, sustainable MSP so that someday they have a very lucrative exit, right? And one that they can make money along the way. So the main thing I want to talk to you about today is really how do you get into that top 4%? Like, when we do a Pareto distribution, a lot of them are in the 80%, but they want to be in that top 20 and more specifically the top 4%, which is somewhere north of 10 million in revenue and obviously 20% EBITDA is where they're going to be. So that's kind of the framework of the interview. But I think before we kind of just start launching into questions can you just give everybody just a brief history of Integris and you as the CEO and how you grew it?
Yeah, no, sure. Thank you. And I love the staging of the growth story and the opportunities that are available for going from sub $1 million to much greater. Because I think what a lot of people may not know is what is now Integris, what used to be known as Domain, until very recently was not too far off from the sizes you're mentioning. Mm-hmm. Meaning, and as recently as 2010, we were under 2 million of revenue. And I didn't even know what EBITDA was. So who knows what the EBITDA was?
There's hope for us then, right? Even people like me, it was like, what the hell is that? It's like, how do you spell it? Right?
Exactly. It was just, is the bank account balance going up or is it going down? That was my only view of whether the financials were working or not. And so I think there is a whole bunch of, whether it's curb jumping, like, there's a lot of terminology around it that you hit, and it's around the individual entrepreneur and them understanding themselves. And then it's about developing a team, developing leaders, developing a sales engine. So I think we can go through all of those different phases, but the quick kind of 30-second story of Integris is we started in 1997 when me and my wife, we were not married at the time, but me and my wife, Michelle, we were seniors at Rutgers University here in New Jersey. And we just started doing IT for law firms because we were going to go to law school, and the lawyers that we knew at the time, they're like, oh, this tech thing, give it a shot. There might be something there. And 1997 was a good time to get into tech. And then we grew it as a lifestyle business. I mean, a good lifestyle, but we grew it as a lifestyle business for quite a while. And then, as I said, it wasn't until and we were, getting into the millions of revenue starting in the 2010s. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until around 2010 or so that we kind of hockey sticked a little bit. And it was the first time where we went out and we went into the MSP community. It wasn't really called MSP yet. I mean, I think the term was getting created, but that's when we started getting involved in the MSP community, learning from other people's mistakes, not just kind of, running through every wall as an entrepreneur ourselves. And that's when the hockey stick happened. And then the hockey stick really got accelerated in 2020 when we did our first private equity recap. And then most recently in 2024, we did our second recap. So second bite of the apple, mm-hmm. as they say. And now we are off to the races.
I love it. And I want to underscore that for people listening to this, because there are CEOs leading companies where they didn't grow up from the ground up. They not that they're bad people, but I think someone watching this you can relate to them. You did the sleepless nights, you went through the challenges and the obstacles of hiring a good team and watching your costs and customer service and technology changes and all the things that go with that. And that's why I really love this interview, because somebody who's brought in once you were at 50 million as CEO, not that they don't have value, they're the person that's going to get it to 500 million.
Yeah, it's just a different skill set.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So what changed? So you're at 2 million, you got this lifestyle business. Why muck it up and try to grow? You know what I mean? And you can laugh because you know what I mean? Sometimes you just go, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have tried to grow it. I don't know. This is
yeah. I think it's probably similar to a lot of other entrepreneurs. I got bored. I'd love to tell you it was some sort of, grand awakening of I know how to scale a business. Absolutely not. It was just entrepreneurial gusto and I'm bored. And remember, we started this when we were in college. So I had not done anything other than this. And so there was a point where it was, okay, well, do we sell it? And remember, I didn't even know what EBITDA was back then. So there really, I'm sure there was something worth selling if I could figure it out. But to me, it was easier to try to scale it. And so that's when we hired our first salesperson. This is in the mid 2010s or right around 2010. And I realized that even though I was a good salesman, I had no clue how to develop a salesperson. And that was a big aha moment for me that I didn't realize until I screwed up hiring multiples. So, you said, been there, done that, hired so many people. Yes, but also hired the wrong people so many times. So the real kind of the lesson learned is the scar tissue of doing it the wrong way. And then realizing, well, if I can just open myself up and put my ego in check a little bit, because that's tough as an entrepreneur to put your ego in check, because by definition, as an entrepreneur, you think you can do this better than the marketplace can. And that's why you go into business in the first place. So to put the ego in check and then go out to the community, share with peers, learn from peers, understand how they had screwed up, learn from their mistakes, find the opportunities for those who've had kind of nuggets of success, and then duplicating their success. I mean, that really is what allowed us to experience that hockey stick. Because when I tried to just hire salespeople myself and develop them, it was, here, follow me around, do what I do. Thinking that was going to somehow just translate. And that was just a total abject failure, because my go-to sales strategy was to walk in, and I used to be a good tech. I'm a very bad tech now, but I used to be a very good tech. My sales strategy used to be to go in and be the smartest tech they had seen and just wow them. And now I'd hired this non-technical salesperson to follow me around and say, do what I do. How could this new person who doesn't even know how to spell IT on day one, go around and wow these? So we had to learn a new I had to learn a new sales process myself, one that wasn't necessarily designed for myself, but designed for a professional selling salesperson. And
that can scale too.
And that can scale, right? Because you can't scale just duplicating Rashaad over and over again. You need to have another model. And so for us, it was Gary Pica's True Methods that we picked up in the mid 2010s. And that was the first methodology that was not tied to a Rashaad personality, but tied to an actual professional sales motion. And so that was a big part of it. So, I think just as a one lesson, it was, you don't have all of the answers as the entrepreneur. Take some humble pie and figure out what you don't know and go out and get help. And listen to, I remember one of my peers very early on was a big proponent of your marketing technology. And she was having so much success. And I remember not even understanding it. And, but being open to these outside providers who had been there, done that, whether it's Robin Robbins or whether it's Gary Pica, whether it's Paul Dipple, whether, all of these folks that I'm sure a lot of people know those names right now, just don't let your ego get in the way. Just consume all of this great content that's out there. Take the pieces that kind of resonate with you, and then run with it. And so a big part of our success was just listening to the ideas of others and not being consumed with that we knew how to do it better ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, people like Gary and myself and Paul, we all think we're the best at what we do. And we have to, because I want to be the best at what I do.
Sure.
But the reality is, you're right. You got to you got to go and listen to everybody. You should go to listen to Paul. You should go listen to these other people. I mean, look at the books behind me. There's not one book back there. I think you've got to really expose yourself to the ideas that are out there and find a methodology that resonates with you, that you can implement. Because my methodology is not for everybody. I mean, it just isn't. The approach that I have to marketing, the approach we take to sales, and so if my methodology doesn't resonate with you, then somebody else, go find somebody else. I mean, maybe you've got to go, read a Jeremy Miner book or his methodology, or The Wolf of Wall Street, or whatever it is. But I do think I like that, you're saying you have to go out there and you got to expose yourself to these learning models, these peers, these mentors, and absorb all it in, because there is good and bad, right? You don't want to just do what everyone else is doing, because then you're just another, average MSP. But
and that takes humility.
Yeah.
To know that you don't have all of the answers, because I think as entrepreneurs, as I said before, almost by definition, we think we know better, and therefore that doesn't apply to everything. Like, we might know better in the tech side, but when it comes to sales and marketing, leadership development, coaching, culture, odds are, that's not an area that we are developed in.
Right. So let's go back, and I'm going to start with smaller, and then we're going to scale, because from my experience, even in growing my business, I'm sure with you, a leader is the bottleneck to the growth. That's why they say the smallest part of the bottle is at the top, right? We are the constraint. And I know personally, and I'm sure you have had to go through personal development iterations of yourself, of what you think you're capable of, or what you had to let go of. Like you're talking about the sales. You had to let go of the idea that everyone's going to sell like you, and that's the way. You had to let go of that idea to get to the next level, and that's tough, right? Because this works today, right, but it's not going to work if I want to get further, right? So if somebody's listening to this, and let's say they're just getting started, like they're under $1 million in revenue, mm-hmm, what are the most important things that they got to get in place to get over that $1 million? And then I'm going to ask you, like, what the next stages are. Like, what are the next kind of big hurdles that you see of evolution to get to that next level?
Yeah. So sometimes it's up until $1 million. Sometimes it can get even a little bit bigger. Okay. I use the terminology cult of personality around the entrepreneur very intentionally, because we have a tendency to be a sun, or in the solar system of our business, right, whether it's a 3-person firm, or sometimes I've seen it even as big as like a 50-person firm. Mm-hmm. Like, some people have very big personalities and kind of very big solar systems. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is, initially, we're really used to the high that we get off of our own success. And we're convinced that it's us as the entrepreneur that is critical to almost everything that's running in the business. And so it becomes very difficult for us to even open up to the fact that we can let other people get the glory and share in that success. But that first phase, like most of the even clients that we have that are still sub, a handful of millions of dollars, that's the biggest thing that I found that they struggle with. They still don't know how to trust other people, and related to that, they don't know how to build and develop other people that they can trust. Mm-hmm. They're still in love with the cult of personality around themselves. They still love having everyone be like, just jumping around and catering to their own kind of ego. And I'll close that deal. I'll get this meaningful conversation. I'll go in and I'll save the day. The first step is really starting to detach your ego from the business and have other people's ability to represent the business, because that's really when it scales. So the first thing I find sub $1 million, especially in the MSP space, is it's a really good tech who started this business. Mm-hmm. So it starts off with, okay, you got to be able to develop other really good techs. I'm not even getting to managers yet, because that's when you start getting into into the higher millions. You don't necessarily need managers until you're over $1 million. But to even get to $1 million, or to get well over $1 million, you need to have other techs who are just as good as you, and you need to relish in the fact that they are just as good as you, maybe even better. Actually, as soon as you start loving the fact that they're better than you, now you're really ready to maybe take it to the next level. And that is, scaling the business. And then you start getting into managers and building a sales team. But I'd say at the $1 million level, it's about just getting your ego in check and letting other people, it's not a cult of personality around one person anymore. It's now going to be a couple of folks who are exceptional. And you know that the clients are in love with them, maybe even more than they are with you. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. And I think, when I hear what you're saying, and I'm just I can hear the voices of maybe not millions of conversations, although it feels like millions with these guys where they're like, but, I can't afford to hire a good tech, but I can't find a good tech, but, but, right? So there's that aspect of it. I also then think what is happening, if they're honest with themselves, kind of what you're saying with the ego, is they're having to let go of the work that they love because they don't love sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Satima, you were talking about Satima. Satima, when she came to me, and I'll never let her forget this story. So she comes into my office. Just so everyone knows, Satima is one of the companies. She's a member of ours, and Integris, purchased the company that they had grown. And there's posters. I have posters all over my wall of, we call it our marketing genius of the month, and it's clients with their success stories all over the walls of the office. And she goes in and she goes, but Robin, you understand, I'm an engineer. I can't sell. I'm never going to be great at selling. This is what she tells me. Now, and as you know,
it's so surprising to hear now in retrospect.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And I said, look, it's a skill. And you can learn it because you learned how to program. You learned, because I think she was doing programming. You can learn it. It's a skill. Just follow the footsteps on the floor that I'm going to give you. And before you know it, you'll be tangoing. I promise. Right. And so I think part of that, also there's an emotional piece. And I'm saying this, I want to know if you agree with it. There's an emotional piece of, I like doing the technical work. And what they want to hire is not more engineers. What they want to hire is a marketing person who will just bring them customers without any thought, strategy. You know what I mean? So what are your thoughts on that?
That's absolutely right. And so they have to start changing what they're valuing. When I started this business a long time ago, it was about wowing a client with my capabilities, my technical capabilities. That ended a long, long time ago. And now it's about, with staff and obviously companies now that we're acquiring, it's about building relationships, about leadership development, it's none of the same thing. So to your point, the skills that you have to develop as the entrepreneur shift completely. Back then it was about how many MCSEs and CISSPs I can get. And then at some point it completely shifted to, I have to get really good at hiring. Like I have to be able to identify talent. I need to develop talent. So to get back to the one point that you had mentioned about, I can't hire a good tech. Yeah. Okay, I get it. Well, then the skill you need to develop is how to make a good tech, like how to develop a good tech. I don't know of any successful business owner that doesn't know how to develop talent. If you are on the flip side, I do know of plenty of mediocre to okay business people and entrepreneurs where good talent goes to die and then quits because the sun refuses to let anyone else shine.
Right.
And so I think you're absolutely right. You have to change what your definition of success is. If your definition of success is always wowing the client with your server install, well, then just get used to that's the success you're going to get.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a decision that needs to be made. And that is, this is going to be a lifestyle business.
Yeah.
And I'm
Which
going to
is okay too.
And that's fine, right? But I think it's what happens is you either make that, or this is a business that I actually want. It's an actual business. It's not a lifestyle hustle. And that sounds terrible, say hustle. But the only way you grow that is to get better customers, because and a few of really good customers, because there's a limit. You can't, if you're going to be the sun, then there's only, and you have to do all the work.
There's only so many customers you can, and I'll use it again just to emphasize the point, but the largest cult of personality that I've been able to see businesses, I've seen MSPs grow to, believe it or not, 20, 25 million around a cult of, but these are like really bright suns. Mm-hmm. Like you were talking about 4%. No, I'm talking like 0.1%.
Okay.
But even at that level, it doesn't matter how good your son is. Like you could be God's gift to IT. You cannot scale unless you develop some of these other skill sets.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I think that's the decision. If you're listening to this and you're under $1 million, I think that's the first decision you have to make is, do I want to play small? And if I do, there's pros and cons to every decision. The pro is you don't have to develop talent. You don't have to continue to grow. You just have to get enough good customers to kind of support your lifestyle. And that's fine, I guess, if that's the road you want to take. But if you're listening to this and you're saying, I want to be in that top 4%, I want to have a successful exit, someone's not going to come along and buy your job. They want to come along and buy your company. And to your point, what was interesting about the talent, I wrote this down. Paul Sissel, who's one of our experts in residence, we were just at our last Producers Club meeting, and everybody is lamenting about the cost of engineers and the cost of techs and everything else. And he said something that was really interesting. I want to get your take on it. He said, when you're an MSP that is serving the SMB market, not enterprise, but the smaller, like out 11 to 50 computers or whatever it is, that sort of. He said, you can't afford to hire the top level talent. They're too expensive. You have to develop a training organization to take good people and make them better or build the systems and structures. Like you are a training organization. So I think that's what you're saying is if you're smaller, one of the things that you must be able to do is get a pretty average person and develop them into a good or even excellent tech.
That's right. That's right. Once you get to scale, you then have like Integris is now quite large. So we have the luxury of having some very, very expensive people. But when you're building a business, oh my goodness. I mean, that is what cost prohibitive. And the secret there is the beauty of our industry, the beauty of IT is it's not learned necessarily in some sort of textbook necessarily. It's learned on the job, and it's learned by mentorship and apprenticeship or internships or whatever you want to call it. But it's called by watching, observing, learning. And that is something that is, if an owner or other leaders within a business decide that is something that they value, it is one of the most transformative ways to scale the business. Because as you were saying earlier, in order to scale the business, you need more clients. Yes. So you got to figure out how to get more clients. But then you got to also be able to service the clients.
Sure.
And if it's a battle with recruiters and headhunters and paying those fees, and frankly, even those folks, once they're in a headhunter's Rolodex, they might only be with you for 2 to 3 years until they jump somewhere else. You got to be able to grow your own talent. Mm-hmm. Most of the successful MSPs that have scaled, I'm not saying they all are fantastic at growing their talent, but they definitely have that muscle to develop some of their talent, because it's impossible to scale in an efficient way if you're just buying other people's investments in people. You got to make your investments yourself.
Yeah. So phase 1, you're real small, replace yourself from doing the work.
Yes.
That's like step 1, systems, process, developing people, getting to where you're not having to run the help desk, meaning, be on the help desk and go install, machines or whatever it is that you're doing. Right.
Yeah.
Once they have that, and it's never perfect. I want to just remind everyone, because everyone waits for perfection. It's not going to be perfect. But once you get that good and going, what's the next sort of iteration? What's the next big thing that they have to develop?
So one thing I'd put before systems and process, I would love it, Robin, if that were true, in that systems and process, you could get that. Systems and process, I find sometimes come even a little bit later. Okay. What ends up happening is you as the owner, you have no systems, no process. It's just like, I get this done. And then you get some other folks who are probably similar to you, and they still don't have systems and process, but they get it done.
Just get it done. Yeah.
That's not a good thing, but it's
that's reality though.
That's the reality. That's the reality. Then the next phase is exactly as you described, which is you need systems and process, but most business owners, and I'll speak for myself, when you're used to being able to just run through walls yourself as an entrepreneur, systems and process your mind may not work that way. And so you need a lot of folks follow the EOS methodology about, you're the visionary and you need an integrator. Mm-hmm. So getting some sort of person on your staff, and it doesn't need to be, this is not a COO, that comes way later, like lifetimes later. But it may be an office manager, it may be a controller, like somebody who has a little bit of a finance hat, but you need someone who is now creating systems and processes. So that way you have a repeatable mechanism. That sometimes coincides with your first manager. So getting some, whether you call it a service manager, whether you call it a director of engineering, you come up with a title that you like, that makes them feel good. But you now have, you're for the first time, you're going to start creating an org chart. Because otherwise, before then, it is all arrows point to you. Like literally everyone in the organization, it's a very, very flat org chart. And so I think once you start creating an org chart and being able to delegate to that next level person who you can now trust, who doesn't have your skills, may not be able to go wow clients still. Like that's still you at principal-led sales and maybe a couple of other folks that you've developed, but somebody who can actually just run the basic business and processes and systems, and you don't have to think about it. That is a multiplier.
Right.
For you.
Yeah. So they're getting, you're starting to build people and teams and so forth, right? What about sales and marketing? How would you recommend, because you see a lot of MSPs too. So this is not just what your personal experience, obviously that's valid, but you also see a lot of other MSPs. What are they doing from the sales and marketing staffing perspective and strategy perspective? I don't know if you want to get into specific tactics, but just that go-to-market motion, what is it that they're doing
right
that others aren't? Yeah.
So this might be controversial because I think different people have different views on this. I think principal-led sales can get pretty big. Meaning you can, there's a couple of things that still come first. I think marketing for sure comes first. But hiring a salesperson, my view is that most MSP business owners are not going to be in a position to set up a salesperson for success until quite a bit later.
Like how much? Like how far?
I would say north of 10 million, or definitely north of 5 million of revenue, but even north of 10 million. I think a principal-led sales serves you really well, even up to those sizes, because you're going to have a higher close rate yourself. And the reality is, it's not like you're going to have that many leads, unless you have a lot of success in marketing. Now, if you have a lot of success in marketing where you're just like, there's just too many leads and I can't actually have these meetings myself, well, then, okay, then maybe you get someone else, but that person, just be ready, is going to have a ridiculously low close rate relative to you, and you got to be okay with that. And so normally that just doesn't work out. I see a lot of MSPs in the $2 to $10 million range hiring salespeople because they're like, oh, we're big enough. I need a salesperson. I hired a service manager, I hired a controller, I hired the next thing is I obviously need a salesperson. It's the same thing that I did, which I said, remember in 2010, I went out and got my first salesperson, but I failed miserably for a couple of years until I learned a methodology myself. As I was saying, for me, it was Pika's. And in order to turn that, but most entrepreneurs don't have the patience or the diligence to learn a new sales process that they can actually teach. So my suggestion would be invest in marketing, get more leads for yourself or your other two rock stars that you've created that are now selling sales engineers as well. And that will build you up to $5 to $10 million. But as I said, that's controversial. I just have seen so many MSP owners hire and burn every 1 to 2 years through ineffective salespeople that they hire. They think they develop, they give them a quota, they ask all their friends, how much do you pay these guys? They think they have 1 month of MRR. And these people close maybe $5,000 worth of MRR in their entire lifespan with the company. And that's generous. That's normally the owner closed it and they just got credit for it.
Right.
And it's an endless cycle that they keep going through. And I see that too often. So that's why my recommendation is invest in marketing early to get leads that you close. And you're not going to have unless you spend the time and find a system that you can develop professional salespeople in, whether it's Sandler or Pika or fill in the blank. Unless you have the diligence to stay on top of that, principal-led sales until 10 million.
Yeah, no, it coincides. My recommendation is marketing. You hire a low-level marketing admin even just to get some basic stuff done. Building a list, posting blog posts, posting the social media. Just there's like a lot of like low-level basic stuff, marketing materials, whatever. You hire that person. The first salesperson I tell them to hire is either, sometimes they need an account manager though, because depending on when they come to me, sometimes they are principal-led sales, but they have like 30 managed services clients and they're not doing any kind of real proper account management. So you got to look to that. But when it comes to outside sales, my recommendation is to hire an SDR, sales development rep, like an appointment setter that's booking the appointments and assisting you in sales, right? Like they're like sales support so that you're doing the closing and then you're handing it off. But so I don't think it's controversial. I think it's like, I know what you're saying. I don't want people to get confused in the sense that he's saying don't hire a salesperson until 5 or 10 million. Every once in a while, there's people who do find good enough salespeople and they can do it. It's not impossible, but I know what you're saying. I think if you're an engineer and you don't have a sales process, I think that's why they go to hire. It's not that they think they're big enough. They think, I don't want to do this, so I'm going to go hire somebody to do it. And since they're a salesperson, they should know how to sell, right? I don't have to train them. I don't have to show them the ropes. I don't have to tell them about our story and our value proposition and how do you overcome objections. They're a salesperson. They should know how to do that. And there's an argument that yes, they should, but it's very rare you hire someone off the street, put them in a seat, and they're just productive. I mean, they need
SMB, MSP sales is a very difficult thing to learn for somebody who's just not exposed to it. As we, as I said, right now, I think Integris probably has somewhere between 40 to 50 MSPs that have mergers and acquisitions that have come together. I can count on one hand how many effective salespeople I have found coming up through those businesses. Yeah. I have not found, on one hand, an MSP that was less than 10 million, because we've acquired some 30 million, 40 million. Actually, the most recent was a $60 million MSP. Mm-hmm. And even there, you have a handful of effective salespeople. The vast majority are still just kind of getting up to speed. South of $10 million, I got to think really hard.
It's tough.
As to whether I've found. Now, do we find salespeople there that technically have sold something? Yeah, sure. But when you dig, they're a sales admin supporting an owner who is closing the deals.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Good. It's great. I want to. Yeah. Now let me ask you. So, like, once you're over $1 million, $2 million, you're building this. What did you find were the big sort of, I don't know if we want to call them pitfalls or these milestones or what were the things on your journey to getting to 20 million? What were the dips and how did you get through them?
Sure. So first is developing leaders. And so I think because of what I was suggesting with sales, I think developing leaders broadly outside of necessarily sales is the first step. And then I'll get to sales because, you do have to build a sales engine at some point. So the first thing was learning how to develop leaders. And that also is an area that was new to me. Had never done it before, had an ego, so thought I could do a whole bunch of things. But then getting outside help. I was not one early on to read business books or to lead organizational kind of health books and the Leoncinis of the world and the Good to Greats and all of that sort of stuff. That came way later. And so getting outside, as I said, whether it's a books or whether it's a coach or whether it's a peer group, getting outside assistance to help develop leaders, because then what happens is you're the bottleneck And to some extent, you may sometimes just shift the bottleneck to someone else. And if that person was, for example, your best tech that you turned into a service manager, who then you then want to develop into a leader of the service team, they're going to be just as ill prepared as you, maybe even more so, to learn how to develop people, how to have one-on-ones, how to do coaching, how to develop their own folks. So the big pitfall was not having the resources to teach myself first how to develop people, but then to teach my people. And so for us, getting cultural help, like about how to build a culture in a company, as I said, so it's not just the cult of personality around the owner, and it's actual culture of the business too. Building that, getting outside in just help in how to structure that, getting outside help on how to coach and mentor our leaders. I got a business coach for myself early on. And then as soon as I was on board there, I'm like, okay, all of the leaders that I just promoted into leadership roles, I got them coaches as well. This became very, very powerful. Initially, and it's not something like I thought that sort of stuff was a waste of money, but it was money very well spent.
Yeah, I think I think it's even Buffett said that the one investment that pays dividends way longer than anything else is an investment you make in yourself, in your education, because it can't be taxed, it can't be diminished. It pays off over the long run. And I think a lot of people are way too cheap about it. I think, my business has evolved. You go back 23 years ago when I started, I was selling books, tapes, programs on how to be better in marketing. And back then, people would pay $3,000, $5,000 for a course or for a workshop. Today, there's been so much free information with YouTube and the internet that people it's almost like people don't value it anymore. It's been diminished to where learning how to sell. Oh, I'm just going to go on YouTube and watch some sales training videos, right? It's not the same as having, like you're saying, having a coach that comes in and works alongside of you to actually make sure you understand it and you implement it properly. Because it
creates that accountability too.
Right. Like if I'm playing golf, I can see if I hit the ball, I can see where it goes. I can see the shot, but I can't see the swing. So it takes a coach watching me doing the thing to say, hey, you're shifting this way, you're doing it that way, that sort of thing. And I think that's a lot of people are way too cheap they undervalue and underinvest in that kind of wisdom and coaching and resources. And I think that's a mistake, because then the other way you do is you figure it out on your own, and by making a bunch of expensive mistakes. I mean, you're gonna pay one way or the other. So I tell them, you're either gonna pay with like hard-won experience and you still might never figure it out, or you're just gonna pay somebody who's already climbed to the top of Mount Everest as a guide, and they're gonna lead you up there so you don't die, right? So I love that. Okay, so developing leaders. What else? You see a lot of these MSPs, in order to get to that 4%, what else is required of them to have the mindset, the skills to get to that point?
So I'm not going to touch on the tech. The tech part, I think most people take care. It's kind of native to them. They don't need a lot of guidance on kind of how to remain current. That's what gets them excited. So developing that leadership layer, so that way it scales past you. You actually have an org chart now, as opposed to this flat thing. And then it's creating a sales and marketing engine. And that does come down to understanding what you're good at and what you're not good at. Hopefully, if they have awareness some people kind of have a sense of marketing and how to do it, others don't. So investing in putting that engine in place is really what kind of starts that flywheel. Because if you support both sides, if you support the leadership side, you're supporting the people organization as it grows. And that's something that you need to be able to have. And as I said, I love the ability to develop your own talent, whether it's managers or techs. I love that, because you're not bound by the recruiting limitations as to how quickly can you always just recruit for it. And then on the sales and marketing side, creating that engine, making sure. So at some point, I found that unless you come to grips with if you can be a sales manager yourself, and I would say most MSP owners cannot be sales managers. Mm-hmm. So until you can be a sales manager yourself, you probably will then hire sales folks, get them up to speed. And, as I said, this is initially is exactly as you mentioned. Be very careful as to how you define what sales role that is. I'm with you. I think these need to be SDRs initially. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, and this is for me, my view is it's north of $10 million. You need to hire a sales leader who can help be a partner for you in scaling this.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I think they got to get some salespeople and process a little bit under the belt before they hire a sales leader. My friend Jack Daly, I can hear him yelling at me right now. I don't know if you know Jack, but Jack's always like, you hire the sales leader first and he develops the rest of that. But in
an ideal world, yes, maybe, but that also comes at a lot of money and cost and risk.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And I do think, and I want to ask you a little bit about marketing, because to me, I don't think most people really understand what marketing is. A lot of people think marketing is like hype and hustle, and they think it's, well, if we put out a clever, campaign, or, it's just getting the word out there, or it's the logo and the branding and it's all those things. I think marketing is, and I think even now with AI making it easier and faster for people to create videos and create blog posts and create spam email campaigns. And you see what I mean? Like, I think it's creating this massive amount of noise in the marketplace that's disingenuous. And people think marketing is like spamming thousands of people, hoping some poor schmuck takes the bait and clicks on something and actually books an appointment and, hey, maybe we sell them something, right? I think we're in an oversaturated market. I don't think anybody needs anything anymore. So I think the game has changed. And I think marketing is about creating a specific kind of solution for a specific kind of customer in a unique way. And then marketing is telling that story. It's attracting prospects who genuinely want to hear about how you can help them solve their problems. Because I think we're going to have to pull customers to us, this constant hammering of post, like Gary Vee. All you got to do to be successful is post 57 pieces of content, on 18 different platforms. And that's all you got to do to be successful, right? And it's like, to me, that's not success. That's just massive hustle and spam and wasted energy. And so anyway, that's my thought. So I think more than ever, and maybe you disagree. I mean, if you do, I didn't.
No, I completely agree. I mean, there is so much content out there, but all content, to your point, is not created equal. So right. Just creating 10,000 things or 1,000 things or 100 things is meaningless. It is spam unless it is curated in a certain way. So, for those that know me, for me, a specific type of marketing is the most powerful for us, and it's reputation marketing. Mm-hmm. Meaning, generally the marketing should either inform, educate, entertain. In an MSP, it's not going to be entertain, so we'll put entertain to the side, or impress them. And so for us, making sure that our content is about and very authentic, but about educating them, we're bringing them in. So now, it used to be more about cybersecurity or compliance, and now obviously AI and getting people up to speed on what that means to them is incredibly powerful. That's one side, and the other side is impress them, meaning reputational content about us. So we, for example, are one of the largest MSPs for community banks. The number one reason a community bank should use us is because of the stuff that other community banks say about us. So using testimonials, references, Google reviews, shameless plug, but I don't know if I've mentioned to you, but we had started a business called Biz Ratings many, many years back. And that's kind of a secret, partial success to a lot of our reputation marketing, because that creates Google reviews. Even if we think Google reviews are skewed or not right, the reality is it drives search engine results, and it drives now AI. The output in particular from specific models. So understanding how reputation works online is incredibly powerful, and that's all marketing. So you're right. Like spamming people doesn't work anymore, but getting the content that they're going to care about in front of them is still incredibly powerful, and in some ways is more unique now because of all of the spam that's out there. That if you create good content that they're looking for, it's going to be very, very powerful. So to the extent that an MSP can have an authentic reputation, hopefully they do good work for existing clients. That's incredibly powerful. Or if they have a very, very specific, authentic voice on something that can educate those clients, I think that's powerful too. And so for us, AI is really powerful, but also verticals. So if you can speak to a vertical and their kind of niche need, like document management for law firms or core processors for community banks.
Exactly right. Yeah, I think if we're going to use AI and we're going to use technology, let's use it to be more customized with the message for each individual so we can really speak to their specific world needs, etc. I'm glad to hear this from you, because when I tell people like this, it's like their ears flop over. It's like, well, you can't just have one website then. You can't just have one campaign. Like you can't have one campaign and send it to hospitals as well as a real estate firm, as well as a dog groomer. Like you got to kind of pick a lane, and you've got to have these talk tracks. And I think that's what's happening with AI. I think in content, it's exploding, and everybody can be a creator these days. And everybody's trying to be an influencer, and they're trying to grab attention, and they're doing these outrageous things, or they just blend in. And I think it's creating an environment where people want really unique, authentic. I think it's creating an environment, like I call this the new economy. And the new economy is one of authenticity. It's one of relationships and trust. Yep. Because the more fake there is, the more people want real. And I love the reputation thing, because that actually was my unique selling proposition. I decided when I started the company, once I first started going, I said, I want to be the place that has more success stories than anybody else.
Right.
Because I got to earn that. That's not fake. If somebody goes and writes a 5-star review, or somebody writes me a case study and they say, hey, I went from $500,000 in revenue to $6.5 million in 3 years using Robin's methods, and I have those, to me, that's earned and that's real. And that's, to me, and that was our North Star in us saying, okay, if our unique selling proposition is going to be, we're the people who we have more documented client success stories than anybody else. That to me was our North Star. So I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah. Because if you think about the old world before the internet, it was word of mouth. It was, you did really good work for my friend, my relative, my whatever, my colleague. And so therefore it's less risky. You're probably going to do good work for me. The internet now has created so many places, whether it's case studies, whether it's reviews, whether it's testimonials, whether it's videos, all of those things. For us to be able to leverage that to share our story. And that is incredibly powerful to the extent that business owners can focus on putting that content together. That should be the reason someone uses you, because of what you've done for others before.
Exactly. I was just Seth Godin, listening to something Seth Godin, I know you'll love this. He said, an author's job is to sell the first 10,000 books. It's then the book's job to sell the next million. Like, in other words, like, yeah, you got to get some customers in the door and you got to talk to people and stuff. But then there should be a reputation that takes over, where you are, you're delivering something that the customer will then go tell others about. So I'm with you on that. All right. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, Rashaad. This has been great. Is there anything else we should know about you, or thoughts that you would have for the people who are going to watch this, who are trying to get into that 4%?
No, I think we've covered a lot of great things, but I would say, obviously we're doing a lot of M&A, but a lot of the topics that we just talked about right now are incredibly important to us when we're evaluating businesses for acquisition as well. Meaning, if we go in, we can smell a cult of personality a mile away. And the cult of personality is, it's just, you can't buy it. It's not something you can buy, because as soon as that person goes away, the business is just a house of cards. So not only for the purposes of scaling their business, but also for the purposes of creating enterprise value and wealth creation for them and their family, these are important things to be able to kind of get your ego out of the way and build a business that is built on systems, processes, and people that you've invested in.
Yeah. And I know a lot of the companies that have sold to you personally, and they have, I mean, just to give you a credit where credit's due, I mean, like Satima is actually one of our experts in residence. She teaches sales. So we actually do have sales training, and Satima, helps lead that up. But she has just said that you are one of the most dynamic, like honest and authentic leaders that she has ever met. I mean, she just raves about you. So, and I get that sense of you. I don't think that you're fake at all. And I think that, if a company is kind of thinking, I think an MSP that's listening to this and saying someday we want to sell our MSP, when you sell your business, because I just went through this myself, you want to make sure whoever you sell it to is in good hands, because you don't want them to destroy it. And to anyone's listening, I would say that Rashaad would be somebody that I think who deeply cares about people and is deeply cares about customers and employees. And it's not just a transaction. I get the sense that you run a different show, so to speak, over there. So kudos to you, because Satima is one, but there's been many people I've talked to who have echoed that. So congratulations on your success. And it's so great to see somebody like you in this industry winning.
Thank you, Robin. Very much appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.